Hey, everybody, welcome back to The Collective. We have another fantastic show for you planned out today. Very excited to bring you this one. Kathy, welcome back. Julie, welcome back. Seb, always good to see you. And Sean, again, thank you for joining us. We have a fantastic day. Just a quick heads up, make sure you're all doing this, like the show, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, do all that great stuff, get yourself your email in the morning when we go live, which is, of course, every day. So, quick. Man, my brain failed me right there. Boom. Right at the beginning of the show. So, just a quick reminder, none of us are doctors. I do want to say take everything we do say is our own personal experience, and do take it with a grain of salt. Do your own research. Absolutely. If you have any thoughts or questions, by all means, put them up in the comments, and we will put them up on the screen and discuss them and go from there. Any thoughts or questions before we dive into the convo? Everybody good? All right, let's dive in. So today's topic is mind-body connection. And I think this is an interesting topic because, especially for this group, because we have some high performers here and they have years of experience of mind-body connection. And I don't just mean proprioception, like you're knowing your body in space, but what I mean is the actual separation slash connection, where that line is between who you are somewhere up here and the meat suit that we're all driving. So let's I'm going to go around the table here and let's see what you guys think. What is your first thought on the mind body connection? Julie, I'm going to start with you. What do you think?
I would say I was thinking about this a little bit this morning when I saw the theme, and my initial thought was you can do so much, your body can do so much more than you think if you don't let your mind get in the way.
That's great. That's a great statement. Seb, what do you think?
Exactly the same. If you don't mind, it won't matter. This is my version of mind over matter.
I like that. Kathy, what do you think?
Yeah, I love Seb's interpretation. Yeah, I definitely believe that what you believe you can achieve, and that's a mind-body connection for sure. Anything you put into your brain, you're going to be able to make your body do it if you believe strong enough.
Sean, what were your thoughts, initial thoughts right off the bat?
Well, I didn't think it through very much at all, but as I'm just listening to the panel, I am forming things in real time. So here's a couple of ideas that just came to mind, no pun intended. First things first, the mind body connection. Well, what is our mind and what is our body? I guess we could break it down into all kinds of ideas, philosophical and quantum mechanic and all kinds of things. But at the end of the day, I feel that this body that we've got is working in collaboration with our minds. And our mind forms our world based on its sensory inputs. In fact, coincidentally, I had no intention of writing what I wrote this morning in my Instagram post before I came onto this live chat. But I kind of discussed I was leaning against a wall in Paris exactly a year ago, and it was some abstract art that I was leaning on. It was graffiti. And as I looked at the image this morning with no idea of what I was going to write about it, I thought how interesting that a human being is standing in a real world leaning on a wall that is defined by quantum mechanics or quantum physics. And it's an image of non-realistic abstract art that could be the real world, depending on how my brain interprets it. So the abstract art is real, or is the real world abstract? I'm not sure. But then that's for me, my senses to understand the world around me. It's for my eyes, my feel, all of my senses to determine what's going on in the real time, bring that into my brain, and my brain is responsible for collating it all and patternizing it and understanding that I'm leaning on a wall on abstract art that isn't real world. It is an art world, and I'm looking out at the real world. So it's my brain's job to understand the world around me through my body, through my senses. So the more our bodies experience, the more our bodies are connected to the real world, the more our minds are connected to the real world. And so I guess what I'm saying is, in order to have a better understanding of the world around us, you need to connect your mind to your body through more sensory input as you move through life.
Seb, I saw you nodding quite a bit there. You got any follow up on that?
No, I think Sean is onto something, and I think we've spoken about this before. But anything that you take on that affects you, that affects your mind or affects your body, is automatically pulling the other one into the equation. And so we can't address things in a separated way. Even the way we have it framed now, mind and body separated. Those two things are not separated. They're interacting at, at every chance that we get, and everything we do is, there's some interwoven connection there. So it's about, I believe it's about understanding that. And once we understand that, we can start addressing things in a different way. And if you don't address things in a different way, you'll find out soon enough that the body is connected to the mind by having some psychosomatic reactions. So you'll have some physical reactions or physical symptomology based upon how you're living. So whatever it is that's affecting you, that's affecting your mind, will eventually reverberate through your physical being. And inversely is also, and I've been looking for a word for when it's the other way around, and I couldn't find one ever. So if anybody knows, please fill me in.
Kathy, got any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I was just pondering this earlier, and it brings it back to that, the woman who can pick up a car if her child is under it, simply from mind power, pretty much. I mean, obviously she doesn't have that physical capability to do it. And, but suddenly she does. And literally that's because of our mind. Our brain says we have to, and she picks up the car with one hand and the child escapes. And that always, that image, I guess, has stuck with me since I heard it in school or whatever. And I've always believed that to relate to competition, I guess, regardless of the skill level or the physical capability of my opponent, I believe that if I believe harder or have better mental capacity than her, that I can beat her. And that's why I always hanker back to the 90% mental, 10% physical when it comes to jiu-jitsu or any competitive sport. And just that woman moving the car because her child is underneath it and can do so physically is how it impresses upon my mind that mind-body connection.
I like that a lot. Julie, any thoughts on what we've gone over so far?
Yeah, that's exactly it, Kathy. It's on the day of your competition, whatever it may be, whether it's jiu-jitsu or bike racing or whatever sport that you have, it's going to be your mental game that is going to move you forward. So as long as you've done the work and you've put all the training in, on the day of competition, you have to be mentally stronger than who you're racing against or competing against, and that will move you forward and let you have your best day on the bike or mats, wherever the case may be.
So I have a question. Sean, you got any other thoughts on this before I do?
Yes, I do. So sorry about that. I'm trying to mute as much as possible. So the something that I saw this morning again on Instagram before I hopped over here real quick was a post put up by Pat McNamara over at the University of Badassery podcast, I think it is. And it was just a small clip, and he was talking about how when he was in tier one unit, and generally how each guy was very, very similar, almost cut from the same cloth, as it were. That is the mindset mostly. And as Pat Mack said, and I agree, one thing about tier one is put up or shut up. Put up or shut up. You can either do it or shut up. And so there isn't a whole lot of talking in tier one. There's a whole lot of doing. And so the mind-body connection at tier one is proven time and time again as a patternized, reinforced process of you can do anything in the world. But the only reason that you can understand that is because you do everything in the world. And so there's an important difference between mind-body connection in an abstract art way and a real art way. And so to Julie's point in mountain bike racing, and I actually refine your statement to Kathy a little bit more. I refine it for me, not for you or for anyone else. I've been saying it for, I don't know, a couple of decades. Life is 90% mental and the other 10% is mental. And I'm sure Julie's heard me say racing is 90% mental and the other 10% is mental. And that's 24-hour solo mountain bike racing. That is life. In fact, I put a post up about that just a few days ago. I feel so strongly about the mind runs the program. The mind runs the body. But the body is responsible to collect data. It's responsible to collect sensory information and form patternized solutions within our minds so that we can connect with the real world around us in a rapid fire fashion and be highly fluidized in the moment. And so tier one is a put up or shut up. It is rely on all of your patternized experiences and execute against it. That is what I think all humans should be striving for, is that patternized execution of life where you are connecting with as many experiences as you can in order to make your mind more capable on the daily.
Yeah, 100%. Now, anybody got any thoughts on that before I answer this question? Seth's got the mic drop.
Okay, let's go for lunch, guys.
Yeah, let's call it a day. 11 minutes in, Sean wins the podcast. So the question that I want to ask is, where does drive, or the mind running the program, deviate into delusion? Because if you say, I believe I can do anything I want, well, okay, well, I'm going to go and win a world BJJF tournament right now. Like, that's there's a line there where it becomes, you're not thinking of what you're actually capable of right now. Like, there's a disconnect between your mind and your body. So really what I'm asking is, where do you think that line is drawn? Because as you said, Sean, put up or shut up, but that is a body driven thing. You're actually acting out what you think you're capable of. But if you think of you're capable of more than what you're physically actually capable of, I'm going to go do 1,000 pull-ups, whatever you want to say. So where does that line deviate?
I think Jake Paul is a good, kind of a good example of this, because he's so delusional, but yet he accomplished the things he set out to do. He's not my favorite in the whole world, but he's a great example of this delusion that can become reality. He just set out to be, I'm going to be number one in the world, when he had zero physical anything. He was a high school grade 8 wrestler or something. That was his only fight background. But then he's just delusional in his statements about, I'm going to be the best in the world. I'm going to be the number one fighter, and I'm going to make the most money of any fighter in history of mankind. And he just states this to the world, believes it so strongly. Then all his backers prop him up to becoming that, and he believes it strongly enough, he becomes it. And he did have to put aside his delusions a little bit and get the physical aspects going, but he did that as well. And then he put in the work, and then it just kept being a vicious cycle of putting in the work reinforced his delusions of winning, and he'd win, and then he'd put in the work more, and then he'd keep winning, and he put in the work more, and his delusions became more of a reality. And now his delusions are 100% reality. He's probably the highest paid fighter of all time in history of mankind. And he's getting all the fame he needs. And he says, I'm going to be number one in UFC. He'll probably attain it. It's strange that somebody can have such grand delusions, yet still attain them.
Yeah. Actually, I think you said delusional. I think it's his opponents that are delusional.
Yeah, maybe.
No, well, how did it work out for Diaz there just a few days ago? Am I wrong? So, Nate Diaz showed up delusional, thinking that it was going to be easy peasy lemon squeezy. I looked at Diaz's frame before he stepped into that ring. He didn't look trained. He didn't look like he was really hungry. It didn't look like he was there to win, in my opinion. I'm just saying. And so I think the delusional aspect of this is Jake Paul's opponents. not Jake Paul.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's another piece to this. I think part of the reason why he's making so much money in doing this is because people perceive it as being a delusion, and they want to pay to see it, and
Yeah.
it becomes like a train wreck. But that's a smart HR or PR maneuver, because really he was already training for a long time when he first took his first fight, and he was gifted. Everybody who's ever fought him in the ring had said to him, you could go somewhere with your boxing. So it's not based upon a complete fallacy. Quite to the contrary, he was putting in the work. Then he started the delusion to get to drum up some
PR.
some to drum up some attention, and it worked
Sure
in the
did.
world that we live in, right? And everybody was wanting to see this train wreck unfold. And when it turned into less of a train wreck that everybody sort of expected, they gave him props for being a decent boxer. And so now that he's fought a couple guys that were legitimate fighters and knocked him out, or took him out in one way or another, he's convinced himself that he is as good as he says he is. And by way of actioning that, weaponizing his thoughts and his words, we're now seeing the outcome of that. So I believe there's a strong difference between somebody that's truly delusional, i.e., you haven't put in any work and now you're going to be the IBJJF world champ. That's not happening. But if you've put in the work that a IBJJF that could be expected from an IBJJF world champ, at some point you will earn the right to say that. And if you're extrapolating it and say this is in 5 years, it makes it more reasonable. But if you are competing and you are at that level and you know it, and you say next year I'm winning, then all bets are off if the work has been put in. Right?
And there's an important difference between delusional and a madman. And I know that, Kathy, you understand the difference. You chose the word delusional, but it got us through this conversation. That's good. But there's a difference between delusional and just being a little bit of a freak. I've been called a freak, but it's got me places because I'm hyper-focused sometimes, because I'm not willing to accept the compromise of what other people think are possible. I'm not into mediocrity. Julie knows this, and I know this about Julie. The game that I used to play and the game that she's currently playing, which is 24-hour solo mountain bike racing, you've got to be a little mad. You got to be a little out there to chase world championship titles in 24-hour solo mountain bike racing, because it is not common. It is unusual. And so I think that there has to be a little bit of crazy in you. And I'm not saying crazy bad. I'm saying crazy freaking good in order to pursue those kind of things.
Julie,
Yeah,
you got any thoughts on
100%.
Oh, Kathy, you got any
Oh.
further on that? Where do we go? Okay, let's go to Julie. You go ahead.
I was just going to say, yeah, I get called crazy and a freak all the time when people get a sense of 24-hour racing, and that's kind of my thing. Even the other day, I was out riding and I saw a friend, and I went past him on a climb, and then I heard him in the background, and he was yelling at me to go faster and faster. And then he was talking to his friend, and I just heard him say, "Oh yeah, she's training for the Olympics." And I was kind of laughing because, I mean, clearly I'm not going to the Olympics, but in my own little world, world 24-hour solo championships, that is the Olympics in my sport. So it was kind of funny, but I agree with Sean's point. You do have to be a little freakish, a little nuts to be on your bike for 24 hours. I mean, it's really not normal. So you are a little crazy, a little nuts, and to Sean's point, in a good way. And just to follow up to what Kathy and Seb have said, as long as you put the work in. So, I mean, you can't be a 24-hour mountain bike solo championship if you've never ridden a bike before. So you've got to put the work in. And then if you believe in it and do the work, then that will come and you can achieve what it is that you're hoping to strive for, as long as you're dedicated, put the work in, and have the right mindset.
I really like that. It goes into my next question here, but I'm just going to hit these comments. Unless anybody's got any other thoughts quickly before
Just
I
one
go
thing
for it.
quickly. So when we talk the concept of manifestation, when we talk about the concept of manifestation, is a lot of people and a lot of thoughts around this, making it a spiritual thing. What it really is simply you lining up actions with thoughts, right? So you're actually starting to take the actions needed to manifest those thoughts, and eventually they manifest themselves because you've put in the work in the right direction with the outcome in mind. And so it's not something that's, I'm not taking the spirituality out of anything we do in life, because it's constantly there, but it's certainly not spiritually, it's not a spiritual pursuit. It's an actual pursuit where you're going to do the things that you need to do to achieve the things that you want to do. And that's how manifestation works.
Agree.
Any other thoughts before I hit these comments real quick?
Go
Yeah,
ahead.
manifestation, it's 100% what Seb just said. You can put something up on the fridge that, this is what I do anyway, put things on the fridge for goals that you want to manifest. But I mean, you can't just let it sit there and hopefully achieve them one day. You have to put in the work, obviously, along the way to make them happen. I train 7 days a week right now because I've got the fridge goal to try to achieve coming this September 1st. So, then you have your short term and your long term and all the rest goals. Do whatever method works for you, put it on the fridge, or whatever you have for a method. I use the fridge goal as my method, but you have to put in the work, but there is a certain amount of that manifestation of mind control, because if you just put a goal up there and you do the physical, there's nothing that will achieve that goal if you don't have that complete mind control to make it happen. And again, back to that 90% mind control manifestation, I think a lot of it is just thinking it and it's going to happen, and a lot of it is putting in the work in behind, for sure. But when it comes to the actual competition day or the cycling day or whatever, honestly, it comes down to, in an opponent situation, your mind control is going to be better than hers, and that's the only reason you're going to win, in my mind.
Yeah, no, it makes sense.
There is a little bit more that I'd like to add to that, because it's a long journey, not just a showing up in an event and deciding whether you win or lose. The journey is actually the award, is the win, and so it's only a win scenario if you're engaged in the process correctly. And what do I mean by that? So we're talking about mind-body connection. So like Kathy said, you can have something on your fridge that says, "Go be mega." And you can stare at that every morning and not do anything about it, and you'll never be mega. You can have that thing on your fridge and you can stare at that thing called "Go be mega," and you can start, like, in your head walking out your front door every morning and thinking, gonna be mega, gonna mega that, this is all gonna be mega. But unless you're putting the mega actions behind the mega thoughts, you still don't have a mind-body connection. You've just got a mind, but no mind-body connection. Now, let's
It's
pretend
not
for a moment.
specific enough, right?
That's right. So let's pretend for a moment that you make your mind-body connection where your mind is telling your body what to do, and you understand why you're doing that towards your fridge goal, as the example. Well, here's where it kind of falls apart, even for seasoned athletes or seasoned performers or seasoned humans. They make that mind-body connection based on the fridge goal, but then they don't stay in the now while they're in the task at hand for that day. So they'll churn out their workout, they'll churn out their workload, they'll churn out their XYZ, whatever the task is, to reach that fridge goal, but they're not in it in the now. They're not paying attention to the mind-body connection in the real time. It'll kind of go along these lines. Man, I got to go crack out a mega run. Start. Stop. Okay, now what's next? They missed an entire run where their mind was not connected to their body, where they were not facing the adversity, where they were not understanding their ebbs and flows, where they were not understanding when they were happy and sad and blah, blah, blah. In order to create a mind-body connection, you've got to be in the now, and you've got to focus on what you're doing now in order to understand a mind-body connection. Otherwise, it's just your mind saying, start, stop, what's next?
Good points.
That is
Yeah.
a good point.
And then
Julie,
just to add
oh,
to this for
sorry,
sorry,
yeah, go
Brad,
for it. Go
just
ahead.
to add to this because it's an incredibly powerful point, but also it makes you enjoy the process, and that's an important piece, because we anybody who's pursued anything with any level of obsession will wake up one day with whatever it is that they wanted, and not having seen the time go by, and enjoy the process necessarily. I know for myself, I was so focused on getting to where I was wanting to go that I probably missed 15 years of my life, which really helped me get where I was wanting to go. There's no question. But also, those 15 years could have been my last ones. Like, who knows? I didn't know how much time I had left on this planet, and the relationships that were, hurt as a result of this and whatever. So there is a way to do it, and to stay in the moment as well, so that you get the enjoyment out of the work that you are putting in for an outcome that will be unaffected by what it is that you are doing.
I agree. The enjoying the process, like for example, hanging out with you guys down there doing jiu-jitsu, and getting to see the friendships again, and balancing that with a mother-daughter photo shoot, and some of the things along the way that are balanced. There's so much more less obsessed I am now, and trying to enjoy the process and the journey along the way, instead of just, okay, I'm going to smear every person that I fight today and absolutely destroy them, tap them all out, and that's my goal, and that's all I need to achieve for today, because that's all that matters. And I get too temporarily obsessed. And then that was me like 10 years ago. And now it's like, oh, I'm going to go visit Seb. I get to see Michelle. I'm going to connect with my friends there. I'm going to see if I can make an impression on another girl on the mats today, show her a tip that might help her in her game. And then also get to go back and have lunch with my mom, and then get to visit with her. And, so this whole process of calming down from the entire temporary obsession that I get so worked up that nothing else matters, and mow down the world and hurt people in the process and not notice that. It's something that's come to be in only the last decade for me. And Seb, you hit the nail on the head with that. The enjoying the process has got to be so paramount, that what happens is when your temporary obsession fridge goal is met, you don't just, your life is over now, because that's happened to me a few times where I've got the goal. Now I rip that off the fridge and go, okay, what next? I just absolutely have nothing in my life, because that temporary obsession was so strong. When the goal was achieved, I wasn't worth it anything after, because there's nothing left. It put another goal up, but you miss the whole process. Like you say, 15 years of your life. And what connections did you miss? What people did you maybe mow down and not notice in your process of trying to get to your goal?
Yeah.
So very good point about that, Seb.
Yeah. Julie, you had a thought a second ago?
Oh, I was just going to agree with what everyone had said, that the process is definitely a key part of it. If you're out there every day doing the thing that you're training for and you're hating it and you're complaining about it, well, then you might want to reevaluate what it is that your goal is if you're not enjoying it. So you have to, of course, there's going to be good and bad days. Let's not kid ourselves. You're going to have days where, maybe you had an awful ride because of the weather. You had a mechanical, you were sick, or you had a rough day on the mats. It's part of the process. But at the end of the day, you have to enjoy the process and the journey to get to whatever it is that you're striving for.
Sean, you got any thoughts on this before I go to the question?
I do, real quick.
Yeah.
So here's the good news for anyone who's listening right now. Just listening to the guest panel and understanding myself as the example. The good news is this, that irrespective of how you've run your program to date, how you've run your life, how many mistakes you've made, how well or not you had mind-body connection, how overly focused or unfocused you were at whatever point in your life, I'm listening to the panel and everyone gets it, because they can look backwards and get a sense of things, get some perspective on things, understand, geez, I could have done it better then, but now I understand that and I'm doing it better now. Time will always correct. Time will always put you on the right path as long as you stay focused on what your goals are. More goals will show up, and your path as to how to achieve those goals, the process will smooth itself out. The process for you will become better the more you engage in the process. Eventually, you'll realize through reflection that, I could have done this better, that better. Well, that's what you'll do now. But for now, if you're starting off in the game, if you're 15 years old, 20 years old, 25 years old, whatever the case is, if you're still trying to figure this stuff out, here's the good news. You'll figure it out. So don't put too much pressure on yourself and mind-body connection for now.
That is a great point. Okay, so I'm going to hit these comments real quick. Just Satch, morning team. Morning, Satch. Good to see you. He says, I've been called delusional. Well, let's go, Jake Paul. I got one from Steve Wilson here. He says, there have been 2 athletes I know in mountain biking that have suffered spinal cord injuries, considered catastrophic, and they are both back to walking, riding, and thriving. They both describe this feeling in their core/center/soul that convinced their mind to engage with the work. Don't know what to call it, Seb, but I trust that it does exist. And I think that's a great point in the fact, kind of goes into my question. I think it was Goggins, I think I heard it from. It was like, when you think you're tired, you're actually only at 40%. I
Nimsdai.
don't remember. Nimsdai? Thank you. Couldn't remember exactly who said it, but I think we've all found it at times when you're doing physical work or you're doing something strenuous and you're super tired, but you just like, okay, and you carry on. So my question is more along the lines of coming back to the connection portion of it. Do you think that really the only distinction between what you are capable of and what you can do right now is the understanding of the sacrifices that are just like you're going to have to drive your focus to a T or to a point rather than a wider bandwidth, if that makes sense, in order to attain the goals that you want, in order to get the things that you want to do, you just have to bring your focus into a finer point rather than a wider point. Seb, I'm going to go to you first.
Yeah, if I understand what you're saying correctly, I think what we've discussed in manifestation kind of can fill some of the gaps on that, because yes, there are the actions that you're willfully taking and the actions that you are aware you're taking, and then there are the things that are subconscious that you are doing that are not contributing to your goal or contributing to your goal. And this is where the difference is made. When we talk about manifestation, yeah, you can take the actions that are going to bring you to a world championship, but it's the little things that you are doing because you are in that mindset that are going to make a massive difference. And those things, often you cannot patternize them because you're not paying enough attention. So we've spoken about this before. In order for you to repeat a behavior, you need to be able to patternize it. You need to understand it, because otherwise you'll do exactly what I did as a purple belt in jiu-jitsu. I have no clue how I got anywhere. And then you just can't replicate the positions, or you can't get the submissions that you're really good at on account of not knowing what you did to get there in the first place. And so once you've established what your way forward is, now you can start using this pattern to do things in other areas of your life and really start regaining some control. I say some control because there's only your attitude that you're controlling. Really, there's so many external factors that can interfere. But we're not necessarily worried about that. So I believe that's how this needs to be achieved. Paying attention to the little things that are innocuous that you are doing when you start lining up your actions with your thoughts.
I like that. Julie, you got a thought?
I agree. It's the small details that can make a difference if you're trying to compete at a high level. And one of the best things that you can do if you want to keep track of how you're moving forward or what you did that worked one day and perhaps didn't work another day is make notes, make a journal. So when I always try to focus on something specific that I'm getting better at, I probably have like 4 or 5 notebooks on my desk here, and I'll make notes. So how did the ride go? What was the temperature? What did I eat before? What did I eat during? What was my fluid intake, my sodium, my carbohydrates? How was my energy? How was my mindset? And then you can look back and say, well, that was a great ride, and here's what I did. And maybe I can replicate this on my next ride, or this did not work well for me. How can I change that? And what can I do to improve next time? So just keeping track of those, so then you can look back and reflect on the things that worked and did not work, and then you can implement those on your competition day or in life.
I like that. Sean, you got any thoughts?
Yeah. We've all got a body. We've all got a mind. It's for us to decide what we want to do with it. And there's the rub. If you don't get to work on that, then you don't get to work. So, you've got to figure out what's possible in life. And how do you figure out what's possible? Well, you can, hop on the internet and start watching humans do radical things and think, ooh, I'd like to see if I can throw the longest frisbee in the world. Or you can hang out with people who do wild things, who do freakish things, who do larger than life things. I've been lucky in my life, I suppose. I've always been in the stream of being surrounded by people who are rad, people who really push the envelope, people who inspire me. And so I didn't know there was a thing called 24-hour solo mountain bike racing. But the moment that I found out, well, guess what? That's what I wanted to do, because that inspired me, because it sounded hard. Someone asked me a little while ago, actually, it was Super Saiyan Magical Girl Tanya. She said, did I hear correctly that you used to race 24-hour solos on a single speed hardtail? Yeah, I did. About 15 of my 24-hour solos were on a single speed. And then she asked me why. And I said, because it's harder. And that's the reality of it, man. I pursue harder and harder and harder. There's levels to the game, always, in any game that you're in. In Kathy's world, there's harder. In Seb's world, there's harder. In Julie's world, in all of our worlds, there's harder. It's for us to decide whether we want to engage in that harder. And that's what holds us back when we get comfortable, I feel. When we are reluctant to reach out and touch that thing that is probably harder. I think that's what creates growth in all of us, is being a little, not scared, but being a little hesitant to reach out even further beyond the horizon and see what's over the crest of the horizon. Once you get used to doing that, I think that's where the real magic is. Pushing yourself into the unknown and being comfortable with understanding that is what makes us better at the mind-body connection.
I like that.
Yeah, nice.
Kathy, you got some thoughts?
Yeah, for sure. Sean's hitting it on the head too. It's and Julie with the patternizing, the journaling, it's so good. You got to put in the details, take the notes, do the journals, and then try to replicate. Often I'll have people come up and ask, how do I become a stunt performer? And it's a common question. And being 40 years in the industry, I've been asked that a million times. And I wrote a book on it, actually, and I usually give them a copy as soon as they ask. But the question is not just, okay, here's the details, here's the step number 1, here's the step number 2, here's step number 3. It's such a combination of so many. You can't just become a stunt performer. It's not something you just say, I'm going to do this, graduate with my 4-year degree, do this, and then I become one. It's a million different things intertwined to become one, and sometimes you'll never become one. So I have to explain to them, here's the steps, which are you become a background performer for a long period of time first. So you get used to what the set etiquette is, how to act around on a movie set, always be a background performer for many years. You make your connections that way, but mainly and most importantly, become familiar with the set and how things work. And then second, there's step 1, 2, 3, there's 10 steps, go to acro gym at least 4 times a week. You should be doing gymnastics 3 to 4 times a week for sure. You got to get air sense. You should be getting your motorcycle license, your pilot license. You should go take some stunt driving courses. There's a whole bunch of different steps that you can write down for the person, but it's also a matter of luck. It's a matter of timing, and most of all, being persistent and have perseverance. So I said that last one, that's the most important. And you still may never, with your perseverance, with your persistence, with your networking, with your steps 1 to 10 of the physical things that you've done, you still may never get that first break. It's sometimes just because that particular stunt, they needed a 6'7" person who could do front waist splits, because the skill was going, one foot goes up the escalator, the other foot goes down the escalator, and the actor that you're doubling happens to be 6'7". And they've searched all the union, they searched all the SAG-AFTRA and UBCP and couldn't find a guy that height, that weight that could do that particular skill. So somebody comes in from the outside. That's the only chance ever a non-union performer would ever get called, that has that height, that weight, that look, and that skill. And then only because he's done all the work, though. It's not just some guy off the street. It's because that particular, this is a friend of mine actually, he got in because of this skill. And he did all the work. He was networking constantly. He's going all the union meetings. He was making sure that every networking and stunt meeting he could get to and meet all the guys. Go to Acro Gym on Thursday nights where all the wannabe stunt performers go, plus all the physical, the gymnastics 5 times a week. Got his motorcycle license, did all the things, got a unicycle like I suggested. Not that you ever use unicycling in stunt performing. I've only ever had it one time, but I had to ride a 10-foot unicycle through a drive-through of McDonald's for that stunt. So I had that in my, resume on there. But it's just weird stuff that you have to do all around and put in all that work, plus all the details. Then it's luck and timing. And so he got in on that one skill. Now he's a very successful stunt coordinator out in the industry. He put in the action, he did the background, he did the steps physically, and then he did the timing and the luck part. And I think to manifest also comes into play because you have that frigil or that manifestation happening in your brain as well to keep your perseverance. Otherwise, you'll never persevere in an industry like that because you're shut down 99.9% of the time. You have to have a turtle shell on your back and slough off all the rejection nonstop in order to ever succeed in the industry, and even in a small way. So in order to persevere and continue on the physical steps, you have to have some sort of manifestation to keep your persistence. So I think in anything, regardless of it's a stunt performer you want to become or a world champion IBJJF or a cycling world Guinness Book record holder or whatever you're shooting for, manifestation has to be, I think, paramount. And then all the other things underneath it to keep your perseverance. Sorry, that was really long-winded.
No, it's all good. It brings up an interesting point on when you're talking about luck, and I've heard it referred to as luck only cares for the people that have the work. If they don't have the work, then the chances of you getting lucky are quite rare. Or I've heard you can only win the lottery if you buy a ticket, right? So you have to put in at least the effort before you're capable of engaging in the win or getting the luck to actually work in any way. Which brings up a very interesting thought. But any other thoughts on this? Sean, you got anything? Go for it.
I do. I don't know much about the acting industry or the that whole movie industry scene, but I do know this. Some of the actors that I know loosely misattribute their path. They don't understand what path they're on. They're so focused on the outcome of being the leading role of a movie, and when they don't get that, their life is a failure. They're completely unhappy with the trajectory that they're currently in of their own choosing because they're quote unquote passionate about it. But they're miserable because they're not getting that part that they wanted, that bit part, that 12-second part, that almost no-name part. But they're miserable because they're not getting the outcomes that they've visualized. They've lost sight of the true trajectory, which is, as you just listed off, Kathy, learning how to fly, learning how to ride, learning how to blah, blah, blah. Things that are enriching our lives, that are making our body-mind connection more thorough, more robust, more capable. That is the journey, not the didn't get the part or did get the part. And so people who are on a outcome-based trajectory and they're not meeting their outcome are missing the overarching theme of what life is actually about, and that's richer experiences, a better mind-body connection.
I like that because that really brings it back to why you're doing it in the first place, right? If you want to be a stunt performer just to be a stunt performer, well, then you get to do all the cool things, right? If you want to be a soldier so you can shoot guns and throw grenades, and when you get the opportunity to do that, cool. Good.
Yeah, and it's only cool if it's something that you like doing.
Exactly.
I mean, can you imagine being a soldier holding a grenade in your hand and thinking, I hate this?
I hate this, yeah.
But to that point, sometimes depending on the career, you may have to do the things you don't like just because you need to throw that in there as a skill building. And then it's like, geez, I hate doing this, but this is going to help my resume. So I'm going to go withstand the whatever it is, and you get that on your resume, and that helps too. And part of that is that other 20% we hate doing, we do it anyway.
I don't know many people that really enjoy waking up in the morning, like early in the morning to when they got to be up at 4 or 5 in the morning to get to wherever it is that they want to do. I don't know many people that enjoy that, but I know a lot of people that do it because it's part of the process. They have to do it because that's the time that they have available in order to X, Y, Z, right? So that's a great point, because there's going to be things that you don't like doing, but they are a part of the process. And I think that's part of the mind-body connection, no? That is your mind driving the body, because the idea or the why in which you're going after tells it, no, this is happening because it's required, etc. Any other thoughts on that? I just have one quick comment here before everybody good? Cool. So Steve mentioned this a little earlier, and he says that's where a well-developed, healthy mindfulness practice comes in. Can be very impactful. And this is what I wanted to ask about, is how much does mindfulness, being able to perhaps disconnect from, not disconnect, to connect to the present, how much does that play a role in achieving the connection, but also the goals? I'm going to go to Seb on this one. What do you think?
Yeah, mindfulness is an interesting one, because there's most people need it, and then there are people that are so much inside their head that they actually need to go outside, and not so much try to look at it from the angle of somebody that doesn't practice mindfulness, for example, that never takes the time to be in the moment and really smell, feel, and all the other senses that we possess that we don't tap into, really, because we're relying mostly on our visual senses. And if I can make a little correlation to my world, so I love hiking and being in nature, because nature brings me an incredible amount of peace, of inner peace, and I just spend every moment I can in nature every day. And recently, or last weekend, I was going hiking, and I decided to shift the paradigm a bit and go night hiking. I want to do the same hike that I love doing during the day, but I want to do it at night when you can't see. And the experience was completely different, because I was feeling the hike instead of
So cool.
seeing it, right? And I brought the kids along, of course, to give them that experience, and they were carrying these big torches, and we basically told them, stop the torches and go to red light, because I want you to have the least amount. If you bring your light to a night event, it's a day event now, so it doesn't make it where you want it to be. And so we ended up doing that, and we ended up eventually not using lights and just walking with a bit of the moon that was shining. And then it was the swim that followed that up, because swimming in a lake at night is terrifying for some people, but it's a different experience, and it's important to do that. So anyways, I don't know exactly where I was going with this, but I do believe that paradigm shifting your own patterns, and as Sean likes to refer to as pattern interrupt, is an incredible piece of that. And as tacky as it sounds, life is about the journey. It's not about the destination. So you need to take those steps as they go, and switch things around, and see outside the box, and do things that are uncomfortable, and really, really try to sort of keep yourself guessing, but also experiencing, widening the broad spectrum of experiences that you're having. And it helps you then, when you are faced with a challenge, it helps you have something to fall back on and be like, I've been there before, or this is a difficult event that I went through, or this is a task that I took on that was very difficult and I was able to be successful in it. And so now you're starting to build a tracking history, and you're starting to build something that you can draw upon when times are tough. But if you don't have that to draw upon, as soon as life throws you a curveball, which it will, that's inherent, and you should enjoy that process. I enjoy the process of life. I enjoy knowing that what is the next thing that's going to throw me off my game badly. I can't wait for this to happen so that I can rise to the occasion. But it takes time for people to embrace that mentality, and it needs to be done incrementally. So I went on a bit of a tangent, but
I think it falls in line.
sure
Julie,
does.
any thoughts on the mindfulness piece on what Seb was saying?
Yeah, following up with what Seb was saying, um, his point about you have something to fall back on in the hard times. So that's exactly it. If you have done the work and experienced some of these challenges that may occur in life or in your event, then you can fall back and say, I've experienced this before and I'm prepared and know how to handle it. But having said that, there will be moments and times, as Seb was saying, he can't wait for something to happen and he's got to rise to the occasion. I mean, a lot of people don't have that mindset, but there will be times when things happen. And that's when the mindset is important. You have to try to remain calm, even though maybe you're not prepared for the situation. If you remain calm, how are you going to best address the situation? And that's where mindfulness will come in, and maybe just taking a couple slow breaths, just remaining calm and figuring out what is the best course of action that you can take in this moment. So you've got to engage with what's happening and what makes sense. And then following up when he was saying about the going out at night and the different experience, that's the whole interesting thing with 24-hour mountain bike racing, is that the evening, everything is different. So the light's different, the sounds, the smells, all of it is different. The course gets different. So all these new challenges come in. So it's a whole different experience that occurs at night. And that's what makes it interesting. It's almost like a second race. That's, the daytime, and now you're into the evening. And that's a whole other element of the racing, which makes it interesting and challenging.
That's a great point. Kathy, got anything to add on that?
Yeah. So, I mean, when rehearsal, I think sometimes is important too. If we're talking about mindfulness for your competitions, this is something I do anyways, and maybe it's just superstitious, but I go to the venue the night before and emulate and visualize in my head what exactly the techniques are going to be and how they're going to happen and exactly how the fight's going to go the next day. And I think rehearsal or that type of visualization can be in any facet of that mind-body connection. What you visualize and rehearse obviously is going to happen in your body. If you believe it will. So that's just one little physical thing that I do. I always go the day before and rehearse and visualize, and I'll actually have to be on the tactile, be on the mats that I'm going to fight on the next day, and that sort of thing. The other thing, what Seb was talking to about the going into nature, I find I use this for a break from my temporary obsession. And it's mainly because of my husband, because he'll claw me away from my obsessiveness and make me go into nature. And he knows that's where I can connect back again to, I guess, reality. And I definitely through hunting have found that that's where I can connect, because you have to hike to the top of tall mountains, and we always hunt separately, and he takes his quad one direction and I take my quad the other direction. We meet back after dark and talk about what we did during the day. And so we could get a side by side and do it together or ride together, but I need to be separate from him and just be on my own by myself, walking through the woods with my rifle. And that's the most at peace and also connected I can ever feel to my body, I guess. And then the focus of also having a deer or a moose or something that I'm chasing, that focus comes into play. And then all the things that I was thinking about on the mats are just gone. And I guess he's gotten to know me over the last 30 years and knows I need that sometimes. And regardless of it being hunting season or not, he'll take me out into nature and force me to just go hiking. And that is like a break, like a state break for me. And I don't know if others experience this, because you get too obsessed. And then when you get too obsessed, you almost start, one negative thought comes into your head and then you obsess over that. And that's not good either. So a break from competitive training or just training and obsession is really helpful. And even if that's just 2 hours out in the woods to connect with something different, to break your state, I find that's really helpful.
Absolutely. Goes to Sean's point earlier about pattern interrupts. Got any, Sean? You got any thoughts on mindfulness so far?
I do. So mindfulness can be misinterpreted, I feel, by a lot of people. The idea being that they're being mindful in the moment as they work through all of their problems. That's not mindfulness. That's just a mind that is full. Mindfulness isn't mindfulness. And so you've got to be in the moment. You've got to feel your feels. You've got to connect to the world around you. You've got to let your mind interact with your body as an empty shell to some degree, so that you can sensorially connect to the reality around you. Every bit of white noise that you put in between the real world outside of our shell, every little bit of white noise damages the signal that is coming in from the external world. The more white noise you inject into the process, the weaker the signal that you're getting from the real world, the more distorted the message is, the more distorted the interpretation is, as I feel. So our job, I think, in respect to mindfulness, for Kathy as an example, when she's hunting, her job in that moment is to apply her sixth sense. And so that's the point that I was going to try to make earlier. I failed to, it just didn't work out. The idea that our minds and our bodies connected, what is capable? What are we capable of with those two things combined? Well, we can do it as a solo journey where we figure it all out by ourselves, or we can surround ourselves with people who've got a few things figured out that will help us push a little bit harder, expand a little bit more, seek or adventure more in life, so that we can understand something that is called a sixth sense. Now, we all know the five senses, but what is a sixth sense? Well, first of all, in order for it to be a thing, you've got to believe it's a thing. And then once you believe it's a thing, then you got to get to work on creating that thing to understand that it is a real thing. Now, I had my boys many years ago out just behind our house for quite a few efforts, helping them work on their sixth sense. And what I would ask them to do is go hide. I'll try and find you. But as I'm walking towards you, I'm going to be using my sixth sense to determine where you are. It's your job to use your sixth sense to determine where I am. And I'm not talking about hearing me or seeing me. I'm talking about feeling me. If you can encourage someone to do more than they think they're capable of, now you're improving their mind-body connection just through an idea that it's possible. Then they get to work on it or not. And that is life, I think. What we want to work on is determined by what we think we want to work on. Our minds will tell us what we are going to connect to. And if your mind is saying, I want to watch Netflix for the rest of my life, your mind-body connection is a 1 out of 10. But if you want to go seek an adventure and pursue against the most epic life you can live through chasing things like sixth sense, seventh sense, 27th sense, whatever it is, I think that the act of adventuring out into life to expand your mind-body connection is a real valuable journey.
I could not agree more, and that is a great place to wrap it up for the day. The thought that keeps clicking in my head as you were talking, Sean, was in Star Wars they always say to the Jedi, reach out with your feelings. And that concept of reaching out with your feelings, of all of your feelings, of everything, creates that connection, I think. And I do love what we said there. So let's get some final thoughts on the mind-body connection. I know we have barely scratched the surface on this, and we will definitely come back to it another time. Julie, some final thoughts on the mind-body connection?
Yeah, just following up on what Sean said, you do have to be open to new ideas and engage with people who are at the top of their game, so you can learn from them and move forward with that. And that will allow you to, just be open and improve your mindset, and then in turn your body. So, I mean, in the end, it's just about being connected, being aware of yourself and your surroundings, and knowing that if you do the work and you have the proper mindset, engage with positive people, that you will be able to achieve what it is that you're seeking in competition or in life.
Absolutely. Kathy, some final thoughts?
Um, yeah, I just noticed something that whenever I've had the negativity creep in and negative thoughts, um, I tend to get sick. And I notice that's my mind body connection and maybe others. You know, your body just reacts to what your mind is thinking, and there's a connection in a negative way. You got negative thoughts, you maybe drank some that, did whatever that month, and negative things are coming into play. It's funny how your body reacts, and suddenly you ill. Suddenly
Mm.
you've got that cold and it becomes a flu, and so it can react in the negative way as well, your body. And in the positive way, if you keep those positive thoughts going and you use your trigger words, that's one thing that I do a lot. I have trigger words which are positive. When I find my state is switching to a negative way, I'll tune into my trigger words and I have them written down, and sometimes I put them on the fridge or somewhere near that, yellow stickies around the house, and I'll just say those trigger words, and it's kind of like ejecting the negative tape, sorry, I'm old, cassette tape out of my head and putting the new cassette tape back into my head and pushing play. So, or whatever modern way we can say that. But I've always used that particular analogy because, damn, I'm thinking negative again. My body's reacting. I'm getting sick. And then I can't go to Worlds now because I'm sick. Well, I wouldn't have done any good at Worlds anyway. I would have lost because it's black belts that can kill me. And, then I get sicker, and, and then I find my vicious cycle starting. And unless my husband pulls me away and puts me in the woods to hunt, you know, I got to do it for myself. And so I'll get that cassette tape. I'll literally physically see that happening in my mind of I know what I have to do, and throw it in the garbage. And then visually I'll put it back in my head and push play. And then it makes a mindset shift for me and it breaks my state. And when I've said in my mind, I'm now pushing play, everything becomes positive again. And usually I get over the flu and I'm back to training and I have a good positive mindset about the World's coming up or whatever.
Hmm. I like that.
That's my 2 cents.
Seb, some final thoughts? You're muted there, buddy. Hold on.
Sorry.
There you go.
Start practicing that, connecting with other things as well throughout the life. And this speaks to the concept of being grateful to the things that we take for granted. And I'll give you an example of this. It was said once to me very recently, I've never seen anybody look so happy every time you drink lemon water with ice in it. I have my lemon water with ice cubes in it, and when I drink this, I'm in heaven. There is nothing that makes me happier. And I actually felt recently that and this is going to sound totally weird, and I'm fine with that. I felt a connection with the lemon within the water. I felt a deep connection, like a respect almost for that lemon that's in there, that's bringing, this life to me, and water being such an important part of human beings. But last night as well, I made a post about, have you ever looked up in the sky and say, I don't know why I'm still here, but thank you. And I was at the moment, I was connecting with my dogging, with my my walking the dogs and being outside when the sky was 5 different shades, and this superseded the visual. It was a spiritual experience, and this is what I started experiencing life over the last probably 5 years. I've started experiencing life through connection to all the things that we take for granted on the daily. And I think when something happens in your life that, sets you on your heels, or throws you back, or adversity strikes, having those micro wins and understanding how lucky you are to have all the little things that you have is going to help set some perspective around what it is that's going on. But we're discarding absolutely everything we do, and we only focus on the big things. We focus on the big achievement. We focus on the big days. And it's not those things that life is made of, that we need to be anchored in. What we need to be anchored in is the little things that we're able to do. Imagine if I wasn't able to drink water because somehow my system doesn't work properly. And there are people out there that live with this and other conditions every day. hearing for the first time or seeing for the first time. And just imagine the joy that would come from doing that. Well, what if you acted and treated life as if everything you do, you've done for the first time? What kind of connection could you achieve? So this is my actionable. Try to start seeing deeper than what the eye can see.
I love that. Sean, final thoughts?
Yeah, and to Seb's point, I think we're generally discussing now the being present in the now and appreciating the moment for what it is. So that lemon water isn't just lemon water. It's more than just lemon water if that's how you feel about the moment. And that's mind-body connection, man. It's your feels. It's not the emotions that I'm talking about. It's the feeling what you're doing right now, the feeling of connecting with everything around you. That is our mind connecting to the external world through our senses. And we have to take time in the now to understand what we're feeling, not as in happy or sad, but feeling the moment for what the feeling is. And you can only understand that by starting to do it, not asking yourself, am I sad right now? That's not the feeling I'm talking about. I'm saying right now, feel what you're feeling from the bandwidth that you're getting from the external world right now. And in time, the more you focus on that, the more you understand that, the more you can play with that, the more you can expand further into perhaps feeling that sixth sense of the guy across the street who's looking at you and doesn't think that you're aware of it. Sixth sense is something worth pursuing for sure. If you never get there, that's cool because you'll better understand your five senses and feeling the moment.
Yeah, 100%. As you were speaking, I was thinking about, the taste inside of my mouth and the fact that I can feel the bristles on my beard from my thumb and all of the little things that we take for granted that we don't really actively think about. And I appreciated, as you guys were talking, I was finding that connection as I was going, and I appreciate it. It was good. So, as we all learn how to take those little moments and build them into our everyday lives, we can grow into the people that we're supposed to be, and we can do that every day here on The Collective. We'll see y'all tomorrow. Gmo.
Chimo.